Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 3. As we continue to build up a foundational working knowledge of Greek, we're concentrating this week on verbs. Verbs are incredibly important in Greek. And like English, part of the reason for that is because they describe action and activity. But another reason Greek verbs are incredibly important is because they describe that action and activity in ways that are often different than English. And those differences add meaning to the text of the New Testament when you read it. They open up new paths for understanding what the text is really trying to tell you, and more of what the text is trying to tell you, more than you can perceive by just reading a translation. You'll see that happening as you concentrate on what the verbs are saying and listen to Dr. Plummer talk about the verbs in his Daily Dose of Greek. You'll see that happening as you read Dr. Novakovic's analysis of verbs in her handbook on John this week, and as you read Dr. Klink's commentary. This week, I'm also going to introduce you to 3 other professors and bring them into our online class. First, I'll introduce you to another commentator on John's Gospel. His name is Dr. Craig Keener. His 2-volume commentary on John is available to you for free as an ebook from the Fuller Library. And it's a commentary that I highly recommend, right alongside Dr. Klink. As you use it this week, you'll have the chance to compare Dr. Klink's interpretation of the Nicodemus narrative and dialogue with Dr. Keener's interpretation. And as you do that, pay attention to the kind of exegetical evidence they use to support their views. Does it come from the world behind the text, as they look at context and background? Does it come from the world within the text, as they look at evidence from within the Gospel of John, and within chapter 3 and the first 21 verses? Or does it come from the world in front of the text, growing out of their own interpretation or that of others that they cite in the footnotes? So much hinges on how one reads the verb in John 3:2 that in English is usually translated, "we know." Why is it first person plural? We. And why is it in the perfect tense, which you'll learn about as you study in Mounts this week? So as you learn about verbs this week, think about those questions. Learn from Mounts, and then from Plummer, and then from Novakovic, and finally from the 2 commentators you'll read this week, Keener and Klink. Second, I'll introduce you to another Johannine scholar. His name is Dr. Andreas Kostenberger. He'll be coming to you on video in a lecture he presented to seminary students. He'll be setting John chapter 3, verses 1 through 21 for you in its literary context within the Gospel of John, as he interprets it from within that part of the Gospel that's called the Cana cycle. It's a group or a cycle of stories that begins and ends with stories about things that happened in Cana. Beginning and ending a narrative in the same place is one way that the author of John seems to mark off a segment or a section of his gospel and encourages us to see it almost like we would see a chapter in a book and read it with that knowledge, because when we do these things, we'll find those things and that perspective to be helpful and meaningful to us. Then third, I'll introduce you to Dr. Craig Russell. He specializes in teaching the inductive method of examining a biblical text to seminary students. He does it in a way that is incredibly engaging and purposeful and very practical. It's a method built on observing facets of the text, asking questions, and then answering them, as you'll see when you watch his video on Thursday. And we'll continue to interact with it and refer back to it at times during the rest of our course. It's going to be a good week, an important week, an interesting week, with lots of variety and different ways of approaching, observing, and interacting with the text, the story of Nicodemus and Jesus. So let's begin.